Most people believe poverty happens suddenly, like a disaster, like a mistake, like bad luck. But financial struggle doesn't arrive overnight. It grows quietly, silently, one small decision at a time, and so does wealth. This audiobook is not about getting rich fast. It's about understanding why most people never get rich at all. Because the difference between those who struggle forever and those who reach financial freedom isn't talent, it isn't intelligence, it isn't even opportunity. It's the 1% rule, a rule so small it feels harmless, so subtle it's ignored, so boring most people dismiss it. Yet over time, it decides who owns their life and who rents it forever. Welcome to 1% Rule of Financial Freedom. This is not motivation. This is not hype. This is the quiet system behind real wealth. Before we talk about money, investing, or income, we need to talk about something far more dangerous. Your habits. Not the big ones, not the dramatic ones, the invisible ones. The choices you make when no one is watching. The routines you repeat without thinking. The defaults you never question. Because wealth isn't built by massive breakthroughs, it's built by tiny advantages repeated daily. And poverty isn't caused by laziness. It's caused by small leaks that never get fixed. Most people think freedom comes from earning more. But the truth is, freedom comes from compounding control. Control over spending, control over time, control over impulses, control over growth. The 1% rule is simple. If you improve your financial behavior by just 1% per day, your life will not look the same in 5 years. Not even close. But here's the problem. Most people don't fail because they don't know what to do. They fail because they underestimate small decisions. They ignore the coffee. They ignore the subscription. They ignore the lifestyle creep. They ignore the emotional spending. They ignore the habit of, I'll fix it later. Later never comes. Later turns into 10 years. 10 years turns into regret. This audiobook exists to interrupt that pattern, to slow you down, to make you conscious again, to show you how tiny financial habits quietly decide your future. You don't need to be extreme. You don't need to live like a monk. You don't need to quit your job or gamble on shortcuts. You need precision. The top 1% don't do wildly different things. They do slightly better things. Consistently. They spend a little less than they could. They save a little more than feels comfortable. They think longer than most people. They act earlier than others dare. And over time, that gap becomes impossible to close. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone your age, with your income, with your background, is quietly setting themselves free. Not by luck, not by hype, but by discipline measured in percentages. This chapter is about awareness, because before you can change your money, you must see it clearly. Ask yourself this: where does your money actually go? Not where you think it goes, not where you hope it goes, where it truly disappears. Most people never look, because looking is uncomfortable. But discomfort is the entry fee to freedom. In the next chapter, we will expose the silent habits that keep people poor. Habits so normal, they feel harmless. And once you see them, you will never unsee them. Because the moment awareness begins, the 1% rule starts working, whether you're ready or not. We continue our audiobook, but before we move on, write why you chose this video with this topic. Perhaps you plan to build capital with which we can earn passive income, or maybe you want to leave an inheritance for your children. Write in the comments. Thank you. Chapter 2. The Silent Habits That Keep People Poor. Poverty is rarely loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't crash into your life. It doesn't scream, "You are failing." It whispers. It hides inside habits so normal that questioning them feels unnecessary. It disguises itself as comfort, as convenience, as "that's just how life is," and that's why it works. The most dangerous financial habits are not reckless ones. They are accepted ones. The ones nobody warns you about. The ones everyone around you is doing. The ones that feel too small to matter. But the 1% rule says otherwise, because wealth isn't lost in big mistakes. It's lost in daily defaults. Let's expose them. The first silent habit is spending before thinking, not spending irresponsibly, spending automatically. You don't ask, "Do I need this?" You ask, "Can I afford this?" And that single question keeps millions trapped forever. Because "Can I afford it?" focuses on the present. Wealth focuses on the future. The top 1% ask a different question. What does this cost me in 5 years? Every purchase has two prices: the money you pay now and the growth you sacrifice later. Most people only see the first. The second silent habit is lifestyle inflation. Every raise is treated like permission. Permission to upgrade the car, upgrade the phone, upgrade the apartment, upgrade the habits. But wealth is built by people who outgrow their income slowly. They let their income rise faster than their lifestyle. They don't celebrate raises with spending. They celebrate with control. Because every dollar you lock into lifestyle is a dollar you can never deploy into freedom. The third silent habit is financial avoidance. Not checking accounts, not tracking spending, not opening statements. People don't avoid their finances because they're stupid. They avoid them because looking creates responsibility, and responsibility demands change. But the truth is simple. You cannot control what you refuse to measure. The top 1% look, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable, because clarity hurts once. Avoidance hurts forever. The fourth silent habit is emotional spending, buying relief, buying distraction, buying validation, using money to regulate emotions instead of using discipline. Stress becomes spending, boredom becomes spending, reward becomes spending, and slowly money stops being a tool and becomes a coping mechanism. The 1% break this loop early. They separate emotion from transaction. They don't use money to feel better. They use structure to feel secure. The fifth silent habit is waiting for motivation. I'll start saving when I earn more. I'll invest when I feel confident. I'll plan later. Later is the most expensive word in finance because time is the only asset that never compounds backwards. The wealthy don't wait to feel ready. They start small while feeling uncertain. They trust systems, not moods. And here's the brutal truth most people never hear. If you cannot manage small amounts of money well, you will not magically manage large amounts better. The habits don't change with income. They scale. That's why lotteries destroy lives. And why sudden raises disappear. Wealth is not a number. It's a behavior. The 1% rule teaches something uncomfortable. You don't need a new job. You don't need a side hustle yet. You don't need a breakthrough. You need precision. Precision with spending, precision with habits, precision with priorities. Most people want dramatic change, but freedom comes from quiet consistency. In the next chapter, we will break down how small daily financial discipline compounds into massive leverage, and why patience is not passive. It's aggressive control over time. Because once you understand compounding, you stop chasing money and start building inevitability. Chapter 3. The Power of Compounding Small Discipline. Most people misunderstand compounding. They think it's about money. It's not. Money is only the visible effect. Compounding is a law of behavior. Whatever you repeat grows. Whatever you delay shrinks. Whatever you ignore controls you. The 1% rule of financial freedom is built on this truth. Not dramatic actions, not risky bets, not overnight success, but small discipline applied daily without negotiation. Here's where most people lose the game. They underestimate small actions because they overestimate motivation. They wait for the right time, the right income, the right confidence. But compounding doesn't wait. Every day you delay, compounding works against you. Every habit you repeat, compounding locks it deeper. This is why the wealthy are obsessed with routines that look boring from the outside. Automatic saving, automatic investing, automatic tracking. They remove decision-making from money because decisions drain energy. Systems preserve it. The poor negotiate with themselves every month. Should I save this? Should I invest now? Maybe next paycheck. The 1% eliminate the conversation. They decide once, then they automate. That's the first compounding advantage. The second is time leverage. A small amount invested early beats a large amount invested late. Not because the number is bigger, but because time did the heavy lifting. Time works silently, relentlessly, without emotion. It rewards consistency and punishes hesitation. But here's the part most people never hear. Compounding discipline is uncomfortable at first. You feel like nothing is happening. Progress feels invisible. Sacrifice feels pointless. This is the silent phase. Every wealthy person passes through it. Most people quit here because humans are wired to respond to immediate feedback. But compounding delays feedback by design. That delay filters out the impatient. The 1% understand this and lean into it. They measure progress differently, not by results, but by behavior consistency. Did I execute the habit today? Did I follow the rule? Did I respect the system? Results come later. That's not hope. That's math. The third compounding advantage is identity shift. When you save daily, even small amounts, you stop being someone who tries to manage money. You become someone who does. Identity changes behavior faster than motivation ever could. Once your identity shifts, discipline becomes easier. Spending becomes intentional. Decisions become aligned. This is why the 1% rule emphasizes habits over hacks. Hacks break. Habits scale. And here's the brutal truth. If your financial habits require constant motivation, they are not habits. They are wishes. Real habits run even when you don't feel like it, even when life is stressful, even when income is tight, even when progress feels slow, especially then, because that's when compounding separates the disciplined from the distracted. Now understand this clearly. You don't need to do everything at once. That's another trap. The 1% rule says change one behavior at a time, one automated transfer, one spending rule, one tracking habit. Small, precise, non-negotiable. Master one before adding another. This creates momentum without burnout. And momentum is dangerous in a good way. Once discipline compounds, breaking it feels worse than maintaining it. That's when freedom becomes inevitable. In the next chapter, we'll reveal why wealthy people obsess over cash flow control before investing, and why most people try to grow money they haven't learned to protect. Because before money can grow, it must stop leaking. Dear viewers, write which city you're from. It's interesting to see which corners of the world are watching our videos. Chapter 4. Control the leaks before you chase growth. Most people want to invest. They want higher returns, bigger wins, faster growth, but they skip the most unglamorous and most critical step. They never stop the leaks. You cannot fill a bucket that has holes in the bottom. No matter how much water you pour in, it keeps draining out. This is the silent reason most people stay broke, even when their income increases. They don't have an income problem. They have a leakage problem. Money escapes through habits they never question. Untracked spending, emotional purchases, lifestyle upgrades disguised as deserved rewards. The 1% see money differently. They don't ask, how much do I make? They ask, how much do I keep? Because wealth is not built by earning more. It's built by retaining more. Before a single dollar is invested, the wealthy master cash flow control. They know exactly where money enters, exactly where it exits, exactly how much remains. Not roughly, not approximately, precisely. Most people avoid this step because it feels restrictive, it feels like punishment. But control is not punishment, it's protection. When you control cash flow, money stops controlling you. Here's a truth that changes everything. You don't need a perfect budget. You need clear rules. Budgets fail because they require constant decisions. Rules succeed because they eliminate them. The 1% don't track every dollar forever. They create rules that handle money automatically. Rules like a fixed percentage saved before spending, a maximum lifestyle cap, automatic transfers on payday, no debt for depreciating items. Simple, firm, non-negotiable. These rules turn discipline into default behavior. Now here's the part most people miss. Leaks are not just financial. They are psychological. Every unplanned expense creates stress. Every surprise bill creates fear. Every "where did my money go?" moment creates doubt. That doubt compounds too. It weakens confidence. It delays action. It reinforces the belief that wealth is not for people like me. The 1% kill this cycle early. They remove uncertainty. Certainty creates calm. Calm creates clarity. Clarity creates better decisions, and better decisions compound faster than money ever could. This is why control always comes before growth. Investing without control is gambling. Growth without structure collapses under pressure. Wealth requires stability first. Now let's talk about something uncomfortable: lifestyle inflation. This is the most dangerous leak of all. Income increases. Expenses follow. Freedom stays the same. The 1% resist this instinct aggressively. They delay gratification not because they hate pleasure, but because they value leverage more. Every dollar not spent is a soldier you can deploy later. Spent once, it's gone. Invested wisely, it works forever. This is the mindset shift. Money is not for comfort first. It's for positioning. Positioning gives options. Options give freedom. And freedom is the real goal. In the next chapter, we'll break down why the 1% think in terms of ownership, not income, and how shifting from worker thinking to owner thinking changes your financial trajectory permanently. Because once you own systems, you stop chasing paychecks. Chapter 5. Stop trading time. Start owning systems. Most people believe money comes from work. Hours in, money out. Effort equals reward. That belief feels logical, it feels fair, it feels safe, and it quietly keeps people trapped forever. The 1% break free the moment they understand one brutal truth. Time does not scale. There are only 24 hours in a day, no matter how talented you are, no matter how hard you work. When money depends on your presence, your energy, your constant effort, your income has a ceiling. The wealthy see income differently. They ask one question before every decision. Does this pay me once, or does it pay me repeatedly? Workers trade time. Owners build systems. This is not about quitting your job tomorrow. This is about changing how you think while you still have one. The 1% don't reject work. They reject linear work. Linear work stops paying the moment you stop showing up. Systems keep paying even when you're gone. That's the shift. At first, systems pay very little, sometimes nothing. That's why most people quit. They can't tolerate delayed rewards. But the 1% understand compounding. A system built once can pay for years. A skill mastered once can produce income forever. An asset acquired once can grow without additional effort. Time is no longer the input. Leverage is. Leverage comes in many forms: capital, knowledge, code, content, ownership. But all leverage shares one trait. It multiplies effort instead of consuming it. This is why the wealthy think long-term by default. They are willing to sacrifice short-term comfort for long-term control, while others ask, how much does this pay today? The 1% ask, what does this become in 5 years? That single question changes everything. It changes how you spend evenings, how you choose skills, how you invest money, how you evaluate opportunities. Owner thinking feels uncomfortable at first because it requires patience without visible rewards, because it demands work with no immediate applause, because it forces you to act without certainty. But here's the paradox. Security does not come from guaranteed paychecks. It comes from diversified systems. One job is fragile. One company decides, one boss decides, one market shift decides. Owners spread risk, multiple income streams, multiple assets, multiple systems working quietly in the background, not overnight, gradually, brick by brick. The 1% don't rush this process. They build it deliberately. They reinvest early income instead of inflating lifestyle. They stack skills before stacking luxuries. They choose boring consistency over exciting chaos. And this is where most people fail. They want the result without the foundation. They want freedom without discipline, income without ownership, growth without patience. But systems reward builders, not wishers. Every hour you invest into something that compounds is an hour reclaimed from the future. That's the real payoff. In the next chapter, we'll explore why habits, not motivation, are the real drivers of financial freedom, and how the 1% design their lives so success becomes inevitable, not optional. Because once the system is built, you no longer rely on willpower. Dear viewer, please write in the comments what interested you most in the video. This will help us improve our videos. Chapter 6, Habits Create Freedom, Not Motivation. Motivation feels powerful. It sparks action, it creates momentum, it makes you feel unstoppable. And then it disappears. The 1% knows something most people refuse to accept. Motivation is unreliable. Habits are permanent. You don't build wealth by feeling inspired. You build wealth by doing the same small actions even when you don't feel like it. That's why the title is The 1% Rule. Not massive breakthroughs, not overnight success, not dramatic changes, just 1% better every single day. Tiny improvements, repeated relentlessly, compound into massive outcomes. The wealthy don't rely on willpower. They design their environment so the right actions become automatic. They remove friction from good habits. They add friction to bad ones. Most people do the opposite. They try to be disciplined while living in environments designed for distraction. The 1% understand that discipline is not about force, it's about structure. Structure beats motivation every time. Look closely at how financially free people live. They automate savings before spending. They invest first, then adjust lifestyle. They schedule learning like meetings. They protect mornings from chaos. They reduce decisions around money. Why? Because every decision drains energy? Habits preserve it. When investing becomes automatic, emotions don't interfere. When saving is automatic, excuses disappear. When learning is scheduled, growth is guaranteed. This is how freedom is built quietly, one habit at a time. The 1% don't ask, "Do I feel like it today?" They ask, "Is this part of who I am?" Identity drives behavior. When you see yourself as a long-term thinker, a disciplined builder, a patient investor, your actions align naturally. This is why habit change must start with identity change. You don't save money to become wealthy. You save money because you are someone who builds wealth. You don't invest to feel productive. You invest because ownership is who you are now. Every habit is a vote for your future identity. Most people vote randomly. The 1% vote deliberately. They understand that habits don't just shape income, they shape character, and character determines decisions. The smallest habit done daily is more powerful than the biggest plan done once. Reading 10 pages a day beats reading nothing for years. Saving a small percentage beats waiting for more income. Learning consistently beats chasing shortcuts. Freedom is not dramatic. It's quiet, boring, unimpressive at first, and unstoppable over time. That's why so few achieve it. They quit before habits have time to compound. In the next chapter, we'll expose why the 1% are obsessed with controlling expenses, not to live small, but to buy freedom faster, and how lifestyle inflation silently kills financial independence. Because how you spend is not about money, it's about control. Tell us, did you know anything that was mentioned in this audiobook? Or maybe you know something else that you would like to mention in the comments. Please write. We will be interested to hear from you. Chapter 7. Control your expenses or they will control you. Most people believe expenses are just numbers, bills, subscriptions, rent, food, lifestyle. The 1% see something deeper. Expenses are chains. Every recurring cost is a silent obligation. Every unnecessary upgrade is a future decision already stolen from you. Financial freedom is not about earning more first. It's about keeping control. The wealthy don't obsess over money because they're cheap. They obsess over money because freedom has a price and waste delays it. Here is the uncomfortable truth. You don't need a higher income to start building wealth. You need lower dependency. Most people increase income and immediately increase lifestyle. Bigger apartment, better car, more convenience, more comfort. And suddenly, even with more money, they feel just as trapped. The 1% understand a dangerous enemy, lifestyle inflation. It feels harmless, it feels deserved, it feels normal, but every upgrade increases the minimum income required to survive. That's not progress. That's a bigger cage. The wealthy ask a different question before spending. Does this move me closer to freedom or lock me into needing more? They don't eliminate joy. They eliminate mindless spending. There's a difference. They spend intentionally. They spend strategically. They spend with awareness. Because every dollar saved is not just money. It's time reclaimed. Time they don't need to work. time they don't need to trade, time they can invest, learn, build, rest. Expenses determine how long you must work. Control expenses, and you control your timeline. This is why the 1% tracks spending early and not obsessively, not emotionally, but clearly. They know exactly what costs are fixed, what costs are flexible, what costs are optional, what costs are ego-driven. They cut what doesn't align with long-term freedom, not forever, just until freedom is secured. This is delayed gratification in action. Most people delay freedom for gratification. The 1% delay gratification for freedom. And here's the paradox. The people who control spending early end up with more options later. More choices, more comfort, more generosity, more peace. Because when your life costs less, your money works harder. Your investments grow faster. Your savings stack quicker. Your stress decreases. Freedom accelerates. The goal is not to live small. The goal is to buy your time back as fast as possible. Every unnecessary expense is a loan against your future freedom. Every intentional cut is a step closer to independence. In the next chapter, we'll uncover why the 1% treats saving not as leftovers, but as a non-negotiable rule, and how pay yourself first quietly separates the wealthy from everyone else. Because wealth doesn't begin with spending, it begins with ownership of your own future. Chapter 8. Pay yourself first, or stay broke forever. Most people save what's left. The 1% save what comes first. That single difference changes everything, because if you wait to save after life takes its share, there will never be anything left. Life always expands to consume whatever you allow it. Bills grow, desires grow, comfort grows, and savings disappear. The wealthy learned this lesson early. Saving is not optional. Saving is a rule. They don't ask, "Can I afford to save this month?" They ask, "How do I structure my life around saving first?" This is not about discipline alone. It's about automation and identity. The 1% see themselves as investors first, consumers second. So when money comes in, it follows a strict order. 1. Future self. 2. Freedom fund. 3. Investments. 4. Then lifestyle. Not the other way around. Most people reverse that order and wonder why they never get ahead. Paying yourself first doesn't mean hoarding money. It means respecting your future. It means acknowledging that the most important person you'll ever support is who you're becoming. The wealthy don't trust willpower. They trust systems, automatic transfers, separate accounts, locked investments. Money is moved before emotions can interfere, because emotions are expensive. Impulse is costly, comfort is seductive, and systems protect you from yourself. Even small amounts matter, especially small amounts. The 1% understand compounding not as a math formula, but as a habit multiplier. Small, consistent savings done early beat large, inconsistent savings done late. Always. Because time is the most valuable asset you'll ever own. Saving early buys time. Saving late fights time. That's why the wealthy don't wait to earn more to start saving. They start saving to force themselves to earn more. Savings create pressure. Pressure creates creativity. Creativity creates income growth. This is the cycle most people miss. When you pay yourself first, something powerful happens. You stop seeing money as something to spend. You start seeing it as something to deploy. You become strategic. You ask better questions. You think longer term. And slowly, quietly, your identity shifts. You stop feeling poor even before you're rich, because control replaces chaos, consistency replaces stress, and clarity replaces fear. In the next chapter, We'll expose why the 1% avoid debt differently than everyone else and how they use leverage as a tool, not a trap. Because debt doesn't make you poor. Uncontrolled debt does. Chapter 9. Debt is a tool or a prison. Debt is not evil, but misunderstanding debt is. The 1% do not fear debt the way most people do, and they do not worship it the way reckless people do either. They respect it, because debt is leverage, and leverage magnifies who you already are. If you are undisciplined, debt amplifies chaos. If you are strategic, debt accelerates growth. This is the dividing line. Most people use debt to buy comfort. The wealthy use debt to buy capacity. That single distinction changes outcomes for decades. The average person borrows to consume, cars that lose value, homes that stretch budgets, lifestyle upgrades that impress strangers. Then they work harder to pay for yesterday's decisions. The 1% borrow to build businesses that generate cash flow, assets that appreciate or produce income, systems that reduce future labor. They never confuse liability debt with productive leverage. Liability debt takes money out of your future. Productive leverage pulls money into it. The wealthy ask different questions before borrowing. Will this debt pay me back? Does this create optionality? Does this reduce or increase my dependency on my time? If the answer is no, they walk away. No matter how tempting, no matter how normalized, no matter how socially accepted, because the 1% do not measure success by appearances. They measure it by freedom of movement. Bad debt locks you into fixed payments. Good leverage creates flexible income. Bad debt increases stress. Good leverage increases choices. And here's the part most people don't want to hear. The problem isn't debt. The problem is using debt to compensate for a lack of discipline. When you lack savings, debt becomes a crutch. When you lack patience, debt becomes an escape. When you lack purpose, debt becomes distraction. The wealthy never borrow from desperation. They borrow from calculation. They never borrow hoping things work out. They borrow knowing exactly how it will work out and what happens if it doesn't. They model downside first because survival precedes success. This is why the 1% keep emergency reserves even while using leverage. They don't gamble their stability. They protect it. They understand something crucial. Freedom is fragile. One mistake with debt can erase years of progress. So they design margin. Margin in time, margin in cash, margin in decisions. They move slowly when borrowing and decisively when investing. And when debt no longer serves them, they eliminate it ruthlessly. No emotional attachment, no ego, no sunk cost thinking. Because money has no feelings, only consequences. If you want financial freedom, learn this rule. Never let debt dictate your schedule. Never let payments own your attention. Never let obligations outrun your income. You don't need to eliminate all debt to become free, but you must eliminate confusion about what debt is doing to you. Clarity is power, and power compounds. In the next chapter, we'll uncover how the 1% think about income differently, why they obsess over scalability instead of effort, and how they stop trading hours for money without quitting their job overnight. Because freedom doesn't begin with quitting. It begins with restructuring how you earn. Hang on a sec. Dear viewers, write in the comments what you'd like us to talk about in the next video. We promise to read all the comments and pick the best and most relevant topics. Thanks. Chapter 10. Income is not the goal. Control is most people think money problems are income problems. They're not. They're structure problems. If income were the answer, high earners would never be stressed. But some of the most anxious people in the world earn six figures. Why? Because income without control is fragile. The 1% understand something early. Income is temporary. Systems are permanent. That's why they don't chase higher pay first. They chase control over how money flows. The average person asks, "How can I make more per hour?" The 1% ask, "How can money arrive without my presence?" That question changes everything. Because when income depends on time, freedom is impossible. You can increase pay. You can work harder. You can add hours. But the ceiling always shows up. The wealthy don't hate work. They hate dependence. Dependence on a boss. Dependence on one paycheck. Dependence on being present to earn. So they build income layers. Layer 1, active income. What pays the bills now? Layer 2, leveraged income. What grows while they work? Layer 3, detached income. What arrives whether they work or not? They don't abandon the first layer too early. They use it to fund the next ones. This is where most people fail. They quit too soon, or they stay too long. The 1% move with timing. They keep jobs longer than their ego wants, but shorter than their fear demands. They don't escape income. They outgrow it. And they understand something subtle. Control beats speed. A slow, controllable income beats a fast, fragile one every time. That's why they love boring businesses, predictable cash flow, repeat customers, long-term contracts. While others chase excitement, the 1% chase reliability. Because reliability compounds. Once income is predictable, planning becomes possible. Once planning is possible, leverage becomes safe. Once leverage is safe, freedom accelerates. This is also why the wealthy diversify income streams, not for excitement, but for resilience. If one stream fails, nothing collapses. Bills still get paid. Decisions stay calm. Sleep remains intact. Stress is expensive. The 1% pay to eliminate it. They invest not just for returns, but for peace. And here's the truth most people ignore. If your lifestyle requires your constant effort, you're not wealthy, you're busy. Real wealth reduces required effort over time. It replaces urgency with patience, reaction with strategy, fear with options. That doesn't happen overnight. It happens deliberately, through systems, through repetition, through refusing to confuse movement with progress. In the next chapter, we'll expose why the 1% obsess over habits instead of motivation, how tiny daily behaviors create massive financial distance, and why consistency quietly beats talent every time. Because freedom isn't built in big moments. It's built in small, repeated choices no one applauds. Chapter 11. Habits are the real currency. Motivation is loud. Habits are quiet. And the 1% trust what's quiet. Most people wait for motivation before they act. They wait to feel inspired. They wait for the right mood. They wait for confidence. The wealthy don't wait. They move first and let motivation catch up. Because they understand a brutal truth. Your life is not shaped by your goals. It is shaped by your habits. You don't rise to the level of your dreams. You fall to the level of your systems. That's why the 1% obsess over daily behavior, not because it's exciting, but because it's effective. They don't ask, "What can I do once to change my life?" They ask, "What can I repeat every day that guarantees progress?" That question builds empires. Small habits look insignificant in the moment, almost embarrassing. Reading 10 pages, saving a tiny percentage, tracking expenses, learning one new concept, making one uncomfortable call. Nothing dramatic happens. No applause. No dopamine spike, no instant reward. But compound that behavior over years, and the gap becomes permanent. This is where most people fail. They underestimate slow growth and overestimate fast wins. The 1% reverse that logic. They understand that wealth isn't built by intensity. It's built by consistency. Intensity burns out. Consistency compounds. That's why their routines look boring from the outside. Same wake-up times, same financial check-ins, same learning rituals, same investment reviews. They don't chase novelty. They chase reliability because habits remove decision fatigue. When behavior is automatic, discipline becomes effortless. The wealthy don't have more willpower than you. They have fewer decisions. They design their environment so the right actions are easy and the wrong ones are inconvenient. Money automatically moves. Investments auto-execute. Bills auto-pay. Savings auto-increase. No debate. No hesitation. No, I'll do it later. Later is expensive. And here's a rule the 1% live by. What you don't automate, you will eventually abandon. That's why habits are built into systems. Your calendar, your bank account, your environment, your routines, not your mood. Because moods lie. Energy fluctuates, motivation fades. Systems don't care how you feel. They work on bad days. They work when you're tired. They work when life is chaotic. And life will always get chaotic. The wealthy prepare for that. They assume discipline will fail. So they build structures that succeed anyway. That's also why they guard their habits fiercely. They don't brag about them. They don't explain them. They don't negotiate them. They protect them. Because habits are identity. And identity drives behavior. When someone believes, I am someone who tracks money, they track money. When someone believes, I am someone who invests monthly, they invest monthly. The habit reinforces the identity. The identity reinforces the habit. That loop is powerful. Break it, and progress collapses. Strengthen it, and wealth becomes inevitable. This is why the 1% don't ask, how much can I make this year? They ask, who do I need to become? Because income follows identity. And in the next chapter, we'll break down why the 1% play long games while everyone else chases short rewards, how patience becomes a financial weapon, and why time, not intelligence, creates the biggest fortunes. Because money doesn't reward speed. It rewards endurance. Chapter 12. The long game always wins. The biggest difference between the 1% and everyone else is not intelligence. It's not opportunity. It's not luck. It's time horizon. Most people live inside short windows. They think in weeks. They think in months. They think in paychecks. The 1% think in decades. They understand something uncomfortable but freeing. Real wealth moves slowly. But once it moves, it doesn't stop. The average person wants proof fast. They want confirmation. They want validation. If this works, I should see results now. That mindset kills compounding. Because compounding is invisible at first. Nothing happens. Then a little happens. Then suddenly, everything happens. But most people quit during the quiet phase. The 1% don't. They expect the silence. They plan for the delay. They understand that time is not an enemy. It's the engine. This is why they don't chase trends. They don't jump from strategy to strategy. They don't abandon systems just because progress feels slow. They trust the math. And the math always favors patience. Look at how most people invest. They want fast returns. They panic during downturns. They sell at fear. They buy at excitement. They treat money emotionally. The 1% treat money mechanically. They invest when markets are boring. They invest when headlines are negative. They invest when others are scared, not because they're fearless, but because they're focused on the long game. They know volatility is the price of admission, and time smooths everything. This long-term thinking also changes how they work. They don't ask, what pays the most right now? They ask, what builds leverage over time? Skills that stack, reputation that compounds, networks that expand, assets that scale. They'll accept lower pay today for ownership tomorrow. They'll choose learning over comfort, equity over salary, growth over status. Because status fades, ownership remains. The average person wants comfort first, security first, ease first. The 1% are willing to be uncomfortable longer. That's the trade. Short-term pain, long-term freedom. Most people reverse it. Short-term pleasure, long-term stress. And here's the truth no one wants to hear. If you are impatient, you will always be poor. Not because you're incapable, but because impatience forces bad decisions. It pushes you to quit early, to chase shortcuts, to abandon what would have worked if you stayed. Time is the multiplier, and the 1% protect it. They don't waste years trying to look rich. They don't rush milestones. They don't broadcast progress. They let time do the heavy lifting. This is also why they don't argue online, don't flex constantly, don't explain themselves. They're busy planting seeds they won't harvest for years. Because they know something most people don't. The future belongs to those who can wait. And in the next chapter, we'll expose one of the most dangerous traps keeping people broke, the illusion of progress, and how the 1% avoid mistaking motion for momentum. Because being busy is not the same as getting wealthy. Chapter 13, Dear Viewers, please write in the comments what assets you buy or are interested in. Perhaps these are stocks, or maybe cryptocurrency. It is interesting to see how you structure your investment portfolio. Also, please write what you think about real estate. Is it still relevant to buy flats today? Chapter 13, Busy is not progress. One of the most dangerous lies people tell themselves is this: at least I'm busy. Busy feels productive. Busy feels responsible. Busy feels like progress. But busy is often just motion without direction. The world rewards visible effort, but wealth rewards effective leverage. The 1% understand this early. If an action does not move the needle, it doesn't matter how exhausting it feels. You can work 12 hours a day and still go nowhere. You can fill your calendar, answer every message, attend every meeting, and still be stuck. Because activity is not achievement. Most people confuse movement with momentum. They check emails all day. They react to notifications. They chase urgent tasks. They feel drained, but unchanged. The 1% ask a different question every morning. What is the one thing today that compounds if I do it repeatedly? They design their days around leverage, not labor. They protect deep work. They eliminate low-value tasks. They automate, delegate, or delete anything that doesn't scale. They know energy is finite, so they spend it where it multiplies. Here's the brutal truth. If your income only grows when your hours grow, you are capped. The illusion of progress keeps people trapped. They feel productive, so they don't question the system. But the 1% question everything. They audit their time like money. They track what actually produces results. They cut ruthlessly. This is why they seem calm. This is why they aren't frantic. This is why they move slower, but go further. They don't chase 10 goals. They focus on one lever, one skill, one asset, one system, and they pull it daily. Most people want variety. The 1% want mastery. Most people want excitement. The 1% want consistency. Because consistency compounds, excitement fades. This also applies to learning. The average person consumes endlessly podcasts, videos, posts, but never applies. The 1% learn just enough to execute immediately. They don't collect information, they convert it. Knowledge unused is entertainment. Knowledge applied becomes leverage. This is why they don't brag about being busy. They brag about outcomes. They don't talk about how hard they work. They talk about what their systems produce. And they are ruthless with distractions. They don't argue with strangers. They don't scroll endlessly. They don't trade attention for dopamine. They understand attention is currency, and whoever controls it controls their future. If your day is filled with noise, your life will be filled with stagnation. Silence creates clarity. Clarity creates power. The 1% intentionally create boredom because boredom is where focus lives, and focus is where wealth is built. In the next chapter, we'll reveal how the 1% design their environment to make discipline automatic, so success becomes the default, not the exception, because willpower is weak. Systems are unstoppable. Chapter 14, Design Your Life. So discipline is optional. Most people think the 1% are more disciplined. They're not. They're better designers. They don't rely on motivation. They don't depend on willpower. They don't fight temptation every day. They remove the fight altogether. This is one of the quiet secrets of financial freedom. The 1% don't win because they are stronger. They win because their environment does the work for them. Look closely at how most people live. Their phone is full of distractions. Their workspace invites interruption. Their home encourages comfort over creation. Their social circle normalizes mediocrity. Then they wonder why discipline feels exhausting. Willpower was never meant to fight an entire environment. The 1% understand something fundamental. Behavior is shaped more by surroundings than intention. So they engineer their lives accordingly. They make bad habits inconvenient. They make good habits automatic. If they want to save money, the transfer happens before they see the cash. If they want to invest, the system executes without emotion. If they want to work deeply, their phone is out of reach. Notifications are off. Doors are closed. No drama. No internal debate. Just structure. This is why they seem consistent. It's not character. It's architecture. They don't ask, do I feel like doing this today? They ask, how do I make this unavoidable? Most people build lives that require constant self-control. The 1% build lives that reward the right behavior by default. That's why their habits stick. They also curate their inputs. They are selective about who they listen to, selective about what they consume, selective about what they allow into their mental space. Yeah, because input shapes identity. If you surround yourself with people who complain, you will normalize stagnation. If you surround yourself with people who build, you will feel uncomfortable staying still. The 1% use discomfort strategically. They place themselves in rooms where they feel small. They choose environments that stretch them. They expose themselves to higher standards, not for ego, for calibration. Your environment tells you what's possible. This is also why they guard their mornings and evenings. Those are the bookends of identity. How you start your day sets the tone for your decisions. How you end your day programs your subconscious. The 1% don't scroll their mornings away. They don't numb their nights with noise. They think, they plan, they reflect. Not because it's trendy, but because it compounds clarity. And clarity compounds results. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If you keep failing at discipline, it's not a moral flaw. It's a design flaw. Fix the system, not the self. Change what's around you, and what's inside you will follow. In the next chapter, we'll uncover how the 1% think about risk, why they take it differently, why they fear different things, and why playing it safe is often the riskiest move of all. Chapter 15. The 1% understand risk differently. Most people are afraid of risk, but they don't realize what they're actually afraid of. They're not afraid of losing money. They're afraid of uncertainty. They're afraid of being wrong. They're afraid of looking foolish. They're afraid of stepping outside the script they were handed. The 1% see risk through a completely different lens. To them, the greatest risk is standing still. They understand something most people never fully accept. Safety is an illusion. A job can disappear. A skill can become obsolete. An industry can collapse. A paycheck can stop. The 1% don't chase danger. They chase controlled exposure. They don't gamble. They calculate. They ask better questions. What's the downside? Can I survive the worst-case scenario? What's the upside if this works? What does this teach me even if it fails? Most people only ask, what if it doesn't work? That single question keeps them trapped. The 1% expect mistakes. They plan for them. They budget for them. They learn from them. Failure isn't an identity. It's feedback. They also separate temporary loss from permanent damage. Losing money can be recovered. Losing time can be redirected. Losing pride is irrelevant. But losing momentum, losing curiosity, losing courage, those are expensive. This is why the 1% are willing to start before they feel ready. They know clarity comes from action, not contemplation. They don't wait for confidence. They build it through movement. Every action reduces uncertainty. Every attempt sharpens judgment. Every misstep refines strategy. The poor fear mistakes because they see them as proof they're not enough. The 1% welcome mistakes because they see them as tuition. And here's the paradox. The more calculated risks you take, the safer your life becomes. Why? Because you develop adaptability. You learn to recover. You build resilience. The person who never takes risks is fragile. One shock breaks them. The person who has failed, adjusted, and rebuilt, unbreakable. The 1% also understand timing. They don't rush blindly. They wait patiently and then move decisively. They study cycles. They observe patterns. They prepare quietly. And when opportunity appears, they act fast. Most people hesitate at the moment that matters. The 1% hesitate before and move when it counts. This is also why they invest in asymmetric opportunities, situations where the downside is limited, but the upside is exponential. A skill, a business, an idea, a relationship. They don't need every move to work. They just need one to work big. That's the power of leverage. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. If you're not occasionally uncomfortable, you're not growing. Comfort feels safe, but it slowly erodes ambition. Growth feels risky, but it builds freedom. In the next chapter, we'll dive into how the 1% think about time, why they obsess over it, why they protect it fiercely, and why money always follows those who respect time the most. Friend, write your opinion on this topic in the comments. Do you agree with us or not? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Chapter 16. Time is the real currency. Money is not the most valuable resource. Time is. The 1% understand this at a level most people never reach. They don't say it casually. They live it deliberately. Every decision they make passes through one filter first. Is this worth my time? Not, Is this comfortable? Not. Will this impress people? Not. Is this easy right now? Time is non-renewable. Once it's gone forever. The 1% don't just manage time. They protect it. They say no more than they say yes. They avoid unnecessary conversations. They limit distractions aggressively. They don't explain themselves endlessly, not because they're rude, but because they're intentional. They understand something uncomfortable. Every yes is a quiet no to something else. Say yes to scrolling, no to learning. Say yes to comfort, no to progress. Say yes to pleasing everyone, no to your own future. Most people sell their time cheaply. They trade hours for approval. They trade focus for entertainment. They trade years for security that never comes. The 1% do the opposite. They invest time before they see results. They sacrifice short-term pleasure for long-term freedom. They delay gratification without resentment. And here's the key difference. They don't confuse being busy with being productive. Busy people feel important. Productive people create results. The 1% obsess over leverage. They ask, how can 1 hour today save me 10 hours later? How can this effort compound? How can this system work without me? They build processes. They automate decisions. They create routines that remove friction. They don't rely on motivation. They rely on structure. That's why they wake up with purpose. That's why their days have rhythm. That's why they don't waste mental energy on trivial choices. What to wear, what to eat, what to focus on. Fewer decisions, more execution. Time is also why the 1% think in decades, not days. They don't panic over short-term losses. They don't quit because of slow weeks. They don't chase trends blindly. They're patient. Patience is a superpower in a world addicted to instant results. They understand that skills compound, reputation compounds, relationships compound, consistency compounds, but only if you give them time. Most people quit too early. Right before the curve bends upward, the 1% stay. They show up. They repeat the boring work. Not because it's exciting, but because it works. And here's a truth most people resist. If you don't control your time, someone else will. An employer, an algorithm, a habit, a distraction. The 1% take back ownership. They design mornings intentionally. They guard evenings carefully. They schedule thinking time. They protect solitude. Because clarity requires silence, and silence creates power. They don't fill every moment. They leave space to think. That's where strategy lives. That's where insight forms. That's where breakthroughs happen. Money flows to those who respect time, because time is where value is created. In the next chapter, we'll uncover how the 1% use discipline, not as punishment, but as a form of self-respect that quietly builds wealth. Chapter 17. Discipline is self-respect in action. Discipline is misunderstood. Most people think discipline is punishment, force, restriction, suffering. The 1% know the truth. Discipline is self-respect made visible. It's not about doing what hurts. It's about doing what aligns. Aligns with your future, aligns with your values, aligns with the person you said you wanted to become. The undisciplined life feels free until the consequences arrive. The disciplined life feels heavy at first until freedom shows up quietly, one day at a time. The 1% don't wait to feel like it. They act based on identity. They don't ask, do I want to do this today? They ask, who do I become if I do this consistently? Discipline is how they vote for their future self. Every workout is a vote. Every saved dollar is a vote. Every focused hour is a vote. Every boundary enforced is a vote. No single action changes everything, but patterns do. The 1% understand patterns. They understand that motivation is unreliable. Emotions fluctuate. Energy dips. Life gets messy. So they remove decision-making from critical actions. They train at the same time. They work at the same time. They invest at the same time. They learn at the same time. Routine is not boring to them. It's liberating. Routine eliminates negotiation, and negotiation is where most people lose. The inner dialogue, maybe tomorrow. I'll start next week. I deserve a break. The 1% hear that voice and act anyway, not harshly, not angrily, calmly. Discipline for them is quiet, almost boring, almost invisible, no dramatic speeches, no hype, just execution. And here's what most people don't realize. Discipline reduces stress. Chaos creates anxiety. Inconsistency creates doubt. Unkept promises destroy confidence. But discipline builds trust with yourself. When you say you'll do something, and you do it, your mind learns something powerful. I can rely on myself. That confidence spills into money decisions, into negotiations, into relationships, into leadership. The 1% don't rely on willpower. They design environments. They remove temptations. They simplify choices. They structure their days to make discipline easier. They don't test themselves unnecessarily. They don't live on the edge of burnout. They pace themselves. Discipline is sustainable when it's strategic. And here's the wealth connection most people miss. Money flows to people who can delay pleasure. Investing is delayed pleasure. Building assets is delayed pleasure. Learning skills is delayed pleasure. The inability to wait keeps people poor. Impulse buying, impulse quitting, impulse reacting. The 1% pause. They breathe, they evaluate. They choose long-term over short-term. Not once, but daily. That's why their lives look lucky later. Discipline compounds, just like interest, just like skills, just like trust. And over time, discipline stops feeling like effort. It becomes identity. I'm the kind of person who finishes. I'm the kind of person who follows through. I'm the kind of person who keeps promises, especially to myself. That identity attracts opportunity, respect, capital, because people trust disciplined individuals. In the final chapter, we'll bring everything together, habits, time, discipline, patience, and reveal how the 1% quietly cross the line from effort to inevitable freedom. Chapter 18, Freedom is quiet, and it arrives suddenly. Freedom doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with fireworks, no applause, no dramatic moment where the world stops and says, "You made it." Freedom arrives quietly, almost unnoticed. On an ordinary day, the 1% know this. They don't chase freedom emotionally. They build toward it structurally, one habit at a time, one decision at a time, one disciplined day stacked on another. And then one day, something shifts. The bills feel lighter. The stress feels distant. The urgency disappears. You realize you're no longer reacting. You're choosing. That's the moment freedom begins. Not when you're rich, not when you're famous, not when you win, but when your time belongs to you. The 1% understand that freedom is not a destination. It's a state of leverage. Leverage over time, leverage over money, leverage over emotion, leverage over attention. They don't try to escape work. They escape forced work. They don't avoid effort. They eliminate desperation. They don't quit jobs recklessly. They replace dependency with optionality. And here's the truth most people never hear. Financial freedom is not created by big moments. It's created by small behaviors repeated without applause. the daily habit of learning when others scroll, the daily habit of saving when others spend, the daily habit of building when others relax, the daily habit of thinking long-term when others chase shortcuts. None of it feels powerful in the moment. That's why most people stop. The 1% continue anyway. They understand something fundamental. The pain of discipline is temporary. The pain of regret is permanent. They choose discomfort now to buy comfort later. They choose structure now to earn freedom later. They choose patience now to avoid panic forever. And when freedom finally arrives, it doesn't change who they are. It reveals who they've become. Calm, measured, unrushed, clear, no need to prove, no need to rush, no need to impress. That's the quiet confidence of the 1%. They don't announce success. They live it. They don't seek validation. They operate from self-trust. They don't fear the future because they've built systems to handle it. And this is the final truth of the 1% rule. Freedom is not luck. It is earned invisibly. Every habit you build, every boundary you protect, every impulse you resist, every hour you invest wisely, it all counts. Even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching, because wealth is built in private, discipline is practiced in silence, and freedom is claimed quietly. If this audiobook changed how you think, even slightly, then the work has already begun. Now the choice is yours. Will you return to old patterns? Or will you commit to becoming the kind of person for whom financial freedom is inevitable? If this resonated with you, share the line that hit hardest. And tell us, what topic should we explore next? Because the journey doesn't end here. It begins now.